Go. Okay. Guess what? Took a few days off there. We've been grinding, but we're back. We're here. We got more laying it down with Big D, of course, and Andrew Big D Morrow. And today I am joined by another caster and fellow Counter-Strike lover and esports lover in general, I'm pretty sure. We got Mr. Zachary Vinson. Well, I'm going to say Vinson twice. He goes by Vinson online, but Zachary Vinson. Vinson, how are you doing today?
Dude, I'm doing great. This is gonna be fun. I'm excited. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
Yeah, dude, of course. It's a treat getting to have anybody that wants to come yap about video games with me. So,
I do a lot of yapping.
yeah,
That I'm good at.
well, I hope so. Yeah, that's what this is all about, is you yapping and me listening, and then maybe I might do a little yapping, but not quite as much. So, I do want to actually ask you, how long have you been playing video games for? How did you get started in being a lover of esports? How far back does it go?
It's got to be like, couldn't tell you like what age I was, but probably like 2011, something like that. So it would have been like 11 or 12 probably. I initially was a Minecraft kid, so I played Minecraft factions, and that kind of like got me into like playing games and like multiplayer games specifically. And then it was a crazy move. So we moved, like me and a friend group moved away from doing that into Counter-Strike. So we started playing Counter-Strike on like my barely capable of running the machine home like family computer, and so from that point on I got into esports, and I started watching Counter-Strike in like 2015. And it's been a love ever since of like esports, but like Counter-Strike a little bit on, a little bit off. Like I took a break between like maybe late 2019 and 2021 or 2022, but otherwise I've followed the scene and watched it pretty carefully ever since that time. So
I hear that story multiple times about, like, you're not the first person to say, well, I used to play a bunch of Minecraft and then I started playing Counter-Strike with my friends. What is it about Counter-Strike that like drew you in, as far as like what was the magic of Counter-Strike for you that like captivated you?
I think the actual connection for me is maybe different than other people.
Yeah.
I'm a super competitive person. I love to compete, even though I haven't like competed at a crazy high level. My whole life, I always like to I like to go at things hard. If I'm gonna try, I'm gonna try it the hardest I can. And so for that reason, I think that was actually the connection. Was like I went from like multiplayer Minecraft factions, which was like very competitive type of space, into playing CS, into playing Overwatch, and I played sports as well. So like at every point, it was like the competitive drive that connected everything. I think that's why it's so interesting to me.
Did you play a lot of FPS before you started playing Counter-Strike, or was Counter-Strike the first
Literally,
one?
literally, well, maybe not zero, but like very close to zero. Like I played like Star Wars Battlefront, but I never had COD or anything like that when I was a kid. I actually had this real OGs will know. I had this like disc of this like Nerf game. It was like a Nerf FPS game. And it was like on a disc. It had a multiplayer, but I played that a little bit. But other than that, no. There's like basically no FPS experience until I started playing CS.
I'm impressed that you found a game that I didn't know what the I knew my games like when I was a teenager through the 2000s. I was like heavy into knowing everything about everything, and I never knew about a disc. I'm gonna have to go look this up and check it out. Are you
Oh,
looking it up right now?
I looked it up. Yeah, it's called Nerf Arena Blast. That's
Nerf Arena Blast. I have heard of that. Never mind. Dude, that's sick.
It came out in 1999.
1999. So what was the first year that you played Counter-Strike? You said 2011 or 2012?
No, that Counter Strike would have been 2015.
Okay.
Probably.
Okay.
I started playing like Minecraft in like 2011, 2012.
Okay.
And then it was like a couple of years later, and I really started getting into it in like 2015.
Well, and so the reason I ask about FPS experience as well is because when you're at that young, impressionable age, you also like, and at that exact time, Dota 2 was popping off, League of Legends was growing like to become this kind of huge thing. Were you ever like enamored with any of the like competition of those kinds of games, or was Counter-Strike it?
I never got like that introduced to like MOBA-esque titles at any point until like later on. And even then, they don't. I think my brain's too small. I think they're like the learning curve is too high. Like
Those games are like learning
I need
another
to be
language.
I need to be babied into it a little bit, and that's definitely not what they do. But I also that's not like my first interest. Like I now being a fan of esports, I can sit down and like appreciate like the stories and the narratives from League because they're so long, like such a history. It's really cool.
Right.
But no, I never got into like actually watching it. I don't know a damn thing about Dota 2. I don't think I've even watched a single game of Dota 2 in my entire life. So no, but like the competition part is what, like I said, that's what actually like connects me to just about any esport. That's why I'm down to sit down and like I know nothing about Smash, but like it's easy enough to watch Smash and understand what's happening, and it's still fun to watch.
Oh yeah. Well, and that yeah, I think that's where I also enjoy a lot of other esports. I've played plenty of MOBA. Like I have 4,500 hours in Dota over the years. So
Damn.
I'm very familiar with how Dota works, and like I understand MOBAs, but like watching them, it's a lot harder to watch them. Dota not so much. I do encourage you, go check out some of the old Dota international footage. Oh my goodness, there is no esport that reaches the hype that the Dota 2 international has over the years, and that's a scientific fact. I'm telling you now, okay? Can't be subjective. It is objective. Just kidding. But yeah, I think the like fighting games and even like Rocket League or like some of the sports games are a lot more accessible and fun to watch. Do you ever see like esports, and I mean this may be way off in the future, but do you see esports ever becoming more popular than traditional sports?
Um, I yes and no. I think it's possible. I think the hardest part of esports is translating translating people who don't know what gaming is really into a viewer, right? It's really easy to do that for a game like football because everyone like conceptually kind of knows what football is about. Like it's just especially in the US, it's just kind of ingrained. The same thing with like that's why to be fair, soccer is the most like watched sport in the world because it's so simple. It's so easy. Not as somebody who's like I played it, but like if I didn't play it, I could easily understand it. And I think that's why Counter Strike, like Rocket League, are actually really easily viewable. I think that's one thing. You have to have a game that's easily viewable by people who aren't into the weeds. But I think it's a timeline thing. I think it's possible, but you have to get like I have to be probably in my like 50s or 60s for that to be a thing. Because it's got to be people who started growing up gaming in that same way and maybe don't actively play games, but are still like interested in the competition to be interested in it. So I think once that happens, it's possible, but we're a long time from that.
We are a long time from that. Yeah, but man, I do really think it'll, because I think like traditional sports is also like as fun as it is to watch. What makes esports such a special experience is like the connection of like you play this game, so when you're watching the like high level players, you're like having even more of a connection, right? Rather than just being appreciative of the game and watching really good people play it, right? So yeah, I think someday it could happen. What? How? So I'm gonna pivot a little bit here. How did you get into casting? How long have you been casting for? And what was the opening stages of that journey like?
I have so just like moving from Minecraft to Counter Strike, it seems like a crazy connection. I've been casting for 5 years now since 2020. It started like late in 2020, so it's not quite 5 years. But I actually didn't start in Counter-Strike at all. I started in Overwatch.
Oh.
That was the game I was playing a lot of at the time. I played it on release, and I played in a team, like a low-level team, like in 2018, 2019 maybe, or maybe 2017, 2018. Took a break, then came back to it, and was part of a like a small boutique organization. Like we just were basically a Discord server that ran like 5 or 6 different teams, and I was like an admin there, and we were like playing the game, and I thought, well, I've always wanted to like talk about it. I've always been a good talker. And I always thought that commentary is a really interesting thing. And I just happened to see like an open request for a game. Like this college was doing a stream, and they were just like, we'll take anyone who knows the game. And it was, I think it was it might have been like Washington State, somebody in the Mountain West Conference or something like that. But yeah, I hopped on, and I did my first broadcast at that time, and it was really bad, but that got me interested in it, and I did a ton of Overwatch. I probably can count on one hand the times that I like was paid to do work in Overwatch. I just did a ton of like Discord leagues and a bunch of different streams for that. I got pretty high up. Like I was right at the point where I could maybe break into the tier 2 space for Overwatch, but there was just a lot of people. And so that's where I kind of started to move over to different things and try other stuff out because I wasn't getting anywhere. But I'd always loved Counter-Strike. So in that time frame, maybe in like 2022 or something, I was like, well, I mean, I could do Overwatch. I could definitely do Counter-Strike. And so I started casting advanced games and went from there. So it was a lot of fun. I also do Valorant, and I've done Valorant basically since it released as well. So it's a pretty wide spectrum.
Do you have a favorite game to cast that you have casted? Is it Counter-Strike?
Yeah, it's Counter-Strike.
Okay, good.
By a pretty
good answer.
By a pretty wide margin. I mean, Overwatch provides different things.
Right.
Like, I'll be honest. I think the skill required to cast Overwatch, there's more. You need a higher technical level of skill to cast Overwatch. So the moments where like you really nail things in Overwatch were amazing, but I think I enjoy Counter-Strike so much more.
So, what is a good caster to you? Like, and what are the kind of like different not roles that a caster can play, but like how important is it for a caster to understand to understand the game that they're casting?
Very important. I think that there's three main pieces, I think, to being a good caster, right? Number one is, and this is no specific order, but one, game knowledge, understanding of the game. You can't provide a good product. Your like role as a caster is in part to inform the audience about what's happening, right? Beyond what just they can see, and to add to that visual experience, right? So your knowledge is required. You can't not know. And I cast Rocket League too, and that's a game that I don't know that much about, and it's because I'm not that good a caster in that game, just straight up. But I can do enough to be good enough for like a bunch of people who aren't that good, right? But like if I cast a game in Rocket League that is really high level players, I'm going to be a little bit behind and a little bit lost. And it's obvious, right? Everybody who knows the game can see that. So definitely got to have game knowledge. Second is that you're an entertainer at the end of the day, right? It's important for you to both provide insight, but then also entertainment, because that is the key to the product. The product is entertainment. And some people get like very lost in that. I can get a little bit lost in maybe not recognizing or remembering that. And then the third aspect, right? So you have technical, detailed like knowledge, entertainment, right? Provide a good product. And then the third part of that is just being interesting, right? Like nobody wants to hear you if you aren't interesting, if there's not anything interesting that you're saying. And you could say that like is part of entertainment value, but a lot of people can be really entertaining and say a bunch of bullshit, and that means nothing. So I think you need to also be interesting, and that includes interesting to people who are knowledgeable and not knowledgeable, and that's where you have to really find like a good line.
How do you find that line? Because that's something I was actually thinking about earlier today. Is like, or I was casting an EU match for some ESEA IM team. Not some. It was Take Flight. I shouldn't say just some. I was casting for them yesterday, and I after I was done, I was thinking about the fact like, uh, I was the fact that a good caster should be finding that balance between, um, being interesting and like understanding to the point where high level players can understand it, but also being accessible enough that somebody who has no idea what the hell is going on can be excited watching that. How do you find that balance?
That's about knowing your audience. It's literally who is the viewer, right? A lot of times, this is something that Anders and Similar used to do when they were on E League, right? And I think it really pissed people off. But they would like dumb down the game a little bit because it was on TV. It was like an audience that may or may not have ever actually had any interaction with the game of Counter Strike. And so they needed to explain some concepts that to you and me are very obvious that like they probably didn't need to say for anyone watching on Twitch. So that's the key is know your audience, right? Like I'm gonna communicate differently if the like I do a lot of collegiate work. Well, for collegiate broadcast, my main audience are probably people involved in the collegiate space, right? People like the like program leaders or directors, like those kind of people who probably have to have a pretty limited knowledge of each game individually, but probably have a lot of breadth of knowledge in esports. And then parents, like so. It's not so useful in those types of broadcasts for me to talk about the detail of the micro of why it was a bad decision for the guy to step forward on a site as opposed to playing more passively. That's not useful information. Nobody is going to get that in my audience, and nobody cares about that in my audience. They care about understanding the basics and me being interesting and entertaining, right? So I think that's what it comes down to. Know your audience. But when I'm casting for CCT, right, like that's a lot different audience. I'm talking to hardcore Counter-Strike heads and betters. Like, and both of those want more detail. They want you to, more likely they want you to be maybe harsher and more critical. So I just think it matters about who you're talking to, and knowing that helps you know what tone, what type of like extent you need to go over those details.
I'm putting on a master class of casting Counter Strike over here. This is good stuff. Yeah, I like that a lot. Know your audience. It's super important. Hang on. I'm writing this down real fast over here. Um, no, I think that's great. Well, and so let's talk too about our region of Counter Strike. I know we're casters, but like we kind of have a unique perspective of the region, whether like because we aren't. I mean, casters sometimes are hired by an org to cast games, but we're not actually affiliated with most organizations. And even you, especially being an owner of LCA, that like kind of calls for you to be even more objective in the space, right? So I think casters have a really unique vantage point of understanding what's going on a like macro level. What do you, our region is obviously not on the level with the rest of the world, right? In terms of Counter Strike, and this is not a simple answer where because if it was, we would be fixing the problem and changing things, right? But what in your mind, like what are some of the conversations and things that you've thought of that like our region is either doing well right now or needs to improve? And do you feel we're kind of we're on an uprise period, or do you feel like we're still steadily falling downwards?
Uh
There's a
I
cat here,
think
by the way.
I think we're definitely. I don't think we're falling. I don't think there's. I think we're on an uptrend. To what extent that is, I think it's kind of hard to say. But in general, it's all the same problems that like we had before. Like practice is not nearly as efficient. We don't have the same level of investment with regard to like local tournaments and stuff like that, and I think that's gotten better. But like it's intentionally people putting money to that, like the Revival series, like the Dust 2 League, like the fact that people are intentionally doing that is helping to fix those types of problems. But I think it's on an uptrend. I think we also, really hurt from the amount of players that like left for Valorant. And we're finally getting to a point where I think that is not as big of a problem as it was. You're finally like getting the rest of the old guard who are like still stuck around. Those guys are either moving up or like moving on. And I don't mean that to say like that I want those people to be gone or anything. I don't. I just think that means we're finally getting up and coming talent that can take that next step and compete with that old guard, and in some cases even prove that, hey, like, we're past this point now. So I think it's an upswing. I think it's process though. And it's tournaments like and land tournaments too, like Frag, that I think help to continue to push us upward in the right direction.
Are we going to see you at Frag 19?
Uh Maybe. We'll see. I right now I I think they changed the dates, so I'd have to like
Did
double
they?
check the dates. Initially, I think they did. This wasn't like recent, but it was like a couple days after they announced the initial dates.
Oh yeah, I think it was supposed to
But
be like the 8th through the 11th or something of July, and then it's the 17th through 20th.
the initial dates, I think I had some work on those dates. So, but I don't know what the new dates are. But we'll see.
My cat's determined to be
Maybe
a part of this interview here, Vinson.
the cat's doing a great job.
Yeah, he's here. He's gonna make biscuits next to me now. He's got very important work to do here. This is my co-catster, Momo.
Ooh.
Yeah, he likes to make an appearance during casts. Um, uh, so let's I want to talk a little more macro. I think that's really well said about our region as well. I do think we're on an upswing, and I'm also excited to see the kind of old guard moving up and moving on in a lot of instances, just because there are. Man, I also feel like I'm gonna drop a little conversational piece here for you as well. I also think that our region has been so focused on streaming and like the idea of content creation and like self like being self-aggrandizing instead of focusing on winning tournaments as a team and establishing dominance first. Like a lot of and I don't think that there's a problem with wanting to be successful as a streamer or content creator, but like our region doesn't feel very hungry to win oftentimes is what it like we have passion, we love the game, and I know we have talent, but it doesn't feel like we have the like hunger and drive to win and build and get through tough times. So I don't know. Yeah,
I don't. I don't think I agree fully. I think for me, I'm never going to take anything away from a player who wants to be able to do this for a living. And I think that that's the main draw of being a streamer, is not really about, for some people, I'm sure it's like partially an ego thing, but like, I think in general, people are encouraged to stream because it's a revenue stream. It's a source of actual income, especially when we have like very few orgs that are paying any sort of salary at all. The number of free agent teams in ECL is crazy compared to, if you look at even Oceania, or South America, especially, is a good like measuring stick comparison tool. So yeah, so I don't think it comes from that perspective. I think also it's a way that you can better brand yourself, get more opportunities. So I don't think that there's any negative to that. What I think really it comes down to, though, is that unfortunately the people who do go the grind route that you're kind of suggesting, I don't think it's really always a good outcome. Look at somebody like Cryptic, who like really has done that, and I think is really good at his job and has continued to build good teams, and not really focused on any of that brand related, like personal brand related, stuff. And the poor guy just like continues to get bad beats. I think having a backup plan is not a bad idea, and I think streaming is a lot of that. What that is for a lot of players.
Yeah, I think I appreciate you saying that because I don't think I presented that right either because streaming is important and it's another facet of like connecting players to like higher level players, especially tier 3 2 players to like get their name out there and branding like you said. Um I guess what I'm talking more about is like the roster shuffle that seems to occur. And I know roster shuffles occur everywhere, but do you feel like do you ever feel like players like do you feel like we in NA break up our rosters too often?
Yes, but I also don't know that I'm in a position to like say why that is. I just know it happens, and it's more often than every other region I covered. So as for why that happens or why it's particularly bad, like or affects us in such a significant way, I don't really know. I don't know the answer to that. I think there's a lot of reasons, but as somebody who's not in the like in those details, I don't think I can at all speak to why that is.
Sure, sure. No, and I'm not trying to like yeah, yeah. That makes sense. Well, I think that's a professional way of looking at it too and helps keep you objective in your opinion about it. Well, let's talk about this. We got Dallas coming up here this week. We got Dallas, and then Austin is starting in a couple of weeks. Do you have prediction for either of those or and Impact season 7? I don't know if you've been following Impact this season at all.
I have not particularly been following Impact, so I don't really know any answers to that. Um, but for Dallas, I mean, to be honest, I think my like take about Austin and Dallas are kind of the same. I People will call me a bandwagoner, but I am a fan of seeing good teams flourish. I think that that's the most fun thing to watch. And I think that like this back and forth between Falcons and Vitality over the last like 3 tournaments and everything like that is really fun. And I want to see that continue. I also think that like having another like another team in the mix of like goat team ever is really cool for Vitality. So in that case, I think it'd be cool to see them continue uh, to like fight for and continue the streak. Like I think that's also really fun. So I don't have any like real predictions. I think for Dallas, there's like I don't know. There's teams I'd want to see well. Obviously, I want to see NRG do well. I want to see Liquid do well. I'm an OG Liquid fan. Um, I also think that Legacy have looked good recently, and I want to see how they do against better teams. But yeah, I don't know that I have like specific things. That's kind of the beauty though of how I like get to watch the scene. Now I have teams that I'm like relatively favorable towards or that I'm a fan of, like Liquid, like Fnatic, um, that I've liked previously before I was a commentator. But now I just like watch the cinema unfold, and it's pretty nice. It means that you're never really particularly disappointed unless it's just shit games, and that doesn't happen all that often.
No, it really doesn't, and I agree. I think we're seeing I love the rivalry between Falcons and Vitality. Put all of the whatever outside the server drama out of it. The rivalry happening between those 10 players right now, very exciting on the server and in these tournaments. And I'm with you, dude. We haven't seen a dynasty in a while. Like we haven't I know there's some people that want to say that like, oh, Liquid hit the Grand Slam or whatever after Astralis or Navi had a good run there. Spirit was doing all right, but like we have not had a dynasty team like Astralis. So seeing or since Astralis, so seeing Vitality get out there and be that like, no, we are winning this tournament every time they show up is really exciting. Plus having those Falcons to like make it hard for them and make it exciting. Yeah, I love it. Are you going to either one of these events?
I'll be at both. I'll be at Dallas and at
Oh,
Austin.
so when are you headed to
So
Dallas?
I leave this Thursday.
It's Sunday at time of recording. It'll be Monday. I'll put this out tomorrow. I've been recording one
Okay,
day and
the
dumping it out the next
the
day.
22nd.
The 22nd.
That's when I'll be gone.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that's exciting. Who are you going with?
Uh, it's myself, Marky, and Ian are going. I'm sure there's plenty of other people that we'll see, but those are the guys that I'm staying with.
Nice. All right. Well,
So it's gonna be fun. I'm excited for it. Excited to like go to a tournament and just watch and like be able to be a viewer.
and just enjoy it while you're there instead of having to work the entire event and stand on your feet and wait around.
Yeah.
Although working the events is really fun. It's its own kind of fun. All right, well, Vincent, I like to try to keep these fairly short around the time of a pug. I've covered everything I want to talk about, other than one last question I have for you. Do you want to get conversational here? Is there anything you want to talk about with me while we're I
No, you've thrown a curveball at me.
yeah, I
I
don't
don't
I don't
think
know if
so.
interviewers ever just ask their guests like, "Hey, what do you want to talk about now?" But
No, I don't think so. Maybe if I had like thought about it a little more ahead of time, I might have an answer. But no, I we've covered a lot though. It's been fun.
yeah, it has been fun. Well, I've got one last question for you, and then before we go, I want to make sure to give you an opportunity to shout out any plugs you got. What so this is the last question I ask everybody, okay?
All
And
right.
this is your opportunity to really get on a soapbox and just preach to the world, okay?
All right. That's dangerous. Don't
Well,
let me do that.
so make sure you just grip it and rip it, okay? My question to you is, speaking to like a younger version of yourself, like a little kid, the world's their oyster, anything is possible. Speaking to a younger version of yourself, what advice would you give them? Um, and it doesn't have to be Counter-Strike or esports related. It can be or it can be, but it can be anything you want. What kind of advice would you give your younger self?
I would tell my younger self, and I don't think he would listen, but I would say it anyway. Uh, that every interaction you have, like every conversation you have, matters, and there's so much value in being an active listener, um, and an active participant. Not to let moments go by with you being on the sideline. And I think applying that to like everything in your life is typically good advice. That doesn't mean insert yourself into things. It just means be there in the moment. I think that's the advice that I would give. Um, don't don't feel okay with just letting the world pass you by if that's the case. That's specifically targeted at me because there's been times in my life where I think that I've done that. So that would I think that would be it.
I think that's good advice in general to share though. Don't let life pass you by. Don't wait to participate. Get in there and seize the moment. That's beautiful. Well, Zachary, do you go by Zachary or Zach?
Either one is fine. I different people call me Zach. Others call me Zachary. To my family, it's Zachary. To like some friends, it's Zach. Others, it's Vinson. Despite them knowing my first name.
All right. Well, Vincent, go ahead and take a moment before I shut this thing down. Give it. Tell us where to find you. Your plugs. Where you at?
Just Twitter. It's Vinson Cast with a one, V1nson. So, yeah, drop me a follow over there. Otherwise, I kind of hate social media. So,
Hey, so does a big D. All right. Well, Vincent, thanks again for joining me. Really appreciate having you on here. And that is it. All right. And